I would see Kansas City as a team being on the outside looking in.
That's spicy. Having a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo on there could be a benefit, but have they kind of burned that bridge? Welcome to 30 Minutes of Football with Legit Football. I am your host, Brian McFadden. Today is Friday, August 22nd, 2022. We are like 13 days away from actual football. I know I do this countdown every time, but I just can't overstate my excitement. I'm especially excited for our guest this week. I have Chris Mangano of Fantasy Endgame joining me. Chris, how are you feeling right now, man?
I'm good. I'm with you, man. I'm counting down the days, right? Last week of preseason, and then we're here.
Have you gotten to the point where, like, I'm watching the first preseason game, the Hall of Fame game, I'm like, oh, put it in my veins. And now I'm like, okay, I'm kind of not week 3, whatever. Let's just get some real action going.
Oh, for sure. And it's funny because when the season ends, it feels like, man, football is so far away. But then when it gets here, it's like, man, it feels like the season just ended. So, but I'm ready. I'm excited.
This is the best time when there's all the hope and all the excitement. It's like before our dreams get crushed as fans of our respective teams. So Let's go ahead and jump in. You guys know the format. We're going to be on a 30-minute timer. Chris and I are going to ask each other questions we have not prepared or shared with the other person. Always exciting and fun. As the guest, by default, you automatically win the coin toss. So you get to choose, Chris. Do you want to receive the first question or do you want to ask the first question?
I'll receive.
Great. I love the guys who want to go on offense first. So with that being said, 30 minutes of football with Legit Football starts now. So we put out a story yesterday as well as a poll that I put on Twitter dealing with coaches on the hot seat, and actually got quite a bit of responses. Some of the choices we put up there maybe hit some nerves. But I want to ask you about coaches on the hot seat. I'll give you the list that ESPN listed as the 5. You do not have to choose one from these 5, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on who you think is on the hot seat. So ESPN listed Mike McCarthy of the Cowboys, Cliff Kingsbury from the Cardinals, Matt Rule of the Panthers, Frank Reich of the Colts, and Kevin Stefanski of the Browns as their 5 most likely on the hot seat. Wow. Who do you think is the one or maybe 2 or 3 coaches most on the hot seat going into 2022?
Well, I definitely agree with Matt Rule. I mean,
yeah,
like make or break time for Matt Rule, right? He's basically gone out, gotten, I guess, his veteran QBs every year. I mean, there's really no excuses for him. I'm a little surprised to hear Kingsbury because I don't feel like the Cardinals are ready to move on from him, even if they don't necessarily go any farther than they did last year. I mean, maybe if they put up just a terrible season, but I don't see that in there.
That was the exact same thing that triggered everyone on Twitter was the fact that Kingsbury was
that name really, really stood out to me. Same with McCarthy. I know McCarthy maybe hasn't been as much of a favorite in Dallas as people would like, but I don't feel like Jerry Jones is a guy who just is a quick trigger guy, right? He'll stand by. I mean, Jason Garrett was there forever, right, doing nothing. So I don't feel like him either. But I'll tell you a guy. Because you know who my team is, I think Ron Rivera may be on the hot seat because... I
was wondering if you were going to bring him up, yeah.
Yeah, because this is a team I don't... As a fan, I don't really understand what they're doing. Like, why? Like, are they trying to rebuild or are they trying to win right now? They kind of seem like stuck in the middle, and I think they're going to have another year where they finish kind of in that bottom third of the league, not good enough to make the playoffs, not good enough to contend, but not bad enough to get like a really premium draft pick. And I think he could definitely be a guy. I definitely think he's on the hot seat for sure, and could be a guy who's looking for a job next year. I'm trying to think of anybody else because we did have quite a few coaching changes this year, so I feel like a lot of the kind of hot seat coaches. Like I was really surprised Matt Rule was still the coach, to be honest. So I'm trying to think who am I not thinking of?
Well, here's a spicy one, and it was not brought up, but. Pete Carroll, which I know is an insane idea, but he's 70 years old. He's the oldest coach of the NFL. He has won a Super Bowl, but it's been a while. Their Hall of Fame quarterback is gone, now in Denver, and they've got not arguably, like we'll just say the worst quarterback situation currently. It could be different if Jimmy Garoppolo ends there. And they lost Bobby Wagner too. It's like they've lost all these pieces. Their defense is devoid of talent. Their offense, short of maybe their running backs and their wide receivers, is short on talent. Are they gonna keep Carroll around for a rebuild? Right? Because I mean that's kind of what it looks like they're setting up for.
Yeah, I'm kind of like split on this one because part of me thinks like, well, if they're going to move on from Carroll, why not just move on from him this year and bring in a young coach and just start? But maybe they are. But the other side of me is thinking, well, maybe they figure this year is a total wash.
Mm-hmm.
Don't bring in some young coach, win 2 games, and already have the fans screaming for his head. Let Pete Carroll go out there and only win 2 games, and then next year when they draft a QB or maybe sign an actual real NFL veteran QB or whoever, trade for one or whatever they do, then bring in their future head coach and say, okay, now you actually have something to work with here. So I can see that. I definitely could see that. And yeah, I mean, I was shocked that they even kept him. Like, what do we like?
What's the upside? I agree.
But maybe they just put him out there to like, take the hit this year, like take the hit for the team, win your 2 games, and then next year we'll bring in our real coach and start.
If that is what they're doing, it's actually not a terrible strategy. If that's what they decide, like I like the idea of not bringing in some first-time head coach and just trial by fire, and the fans start calling for his head. I actually, if you're right on that, and if this is Carroll's last year, and the reason they kept him is for that reason, I can't blame him for that.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, you're up next.
All right, well, I have a few ways we can go here. I guess we'll stick with the QB theme here, and maybe the kind of the elephant in the room, and I know this kind of ties into your team as well.
Yeah.
And that's Lamar, who is, I guess, holding in, but not going to play, but might play, but wants a contract, but also turned down like a huge like more than Kyler Murray, apparently.
Right.
And then there's also links that he might want to go to the Dolphins.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your feeling on that? Like, do you think Lamar, that they work it out and he's with the Ravens long term? Do you have any hope for him being on the Dolphins? Do you even want him on the Dolphins? How do you feel about that?
So we actually put this, we in general on Legit Football try to stay away from the speculation, but the fact that Florio put this out with Lamar having an eye on possibly going to the Dolphins, we actually did report it. My personal feeling, I'll go there first. I want Tua to work. I'm not saying I'm set on Tua, but I think I'm not off the Tua bandwagon yet. Like I'm kind of in neutral, and with all these weapons, the improved offensive line, the great new play caller, and Mike McDaniel, this is the year. If it doesn't work out, would I like a Lamar Jackson? Sure. I think in that kind of Shanahan-style offense, a guy like Lamar Jackson would actually work great. But as it regards to Lamar, it seems to be the guaranteed money in this whole Watson deal that's throwing it off, because he was offered more than Kyler, but he's looking to get a fully guaranteed deal. And as we know, Watson got $230 million fully guaranteed, which a lot of the other owners were upset about, because now you get situations like these. Lamar is a one-of-a-kind talent. He's not just another running quarterback. Greg Roman, Harbaugh, they built that offense around him. They built that offense around his skill set. He won an MVP, and they've gone to multiple playoff appearances. I actually have them as a team set to have a big bounce back this year because they suffered so many injuries last year. A lot of people are kind of writing them off. So I think you have to pay him. I don't know if you can justify, or anyone can justify, a $200 million guaranteed contract. I think the Browns were insane. The Browns have done a lot of things I don't agree with this offseason. But I think Baltimore should find a way to pay him. And I hope that Tua works so that the Dolphins are not an option. I think that's kind of how I'm looking at this. What are your thoughts on the Lamar situation?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think, I mean, I get like both sides, right? Like I get Lamar saying like, hey, look, this guy over here who hasn't played football in almost 2 years and now is going to be suspended for 2/3 of the season is getting $230 million guaranteed. And I'm a former MVP. So I want $230 million guaranteed. So I get Lamar's side, but I also get the Ravens side saying, look, that contract was ridiculous and we can't give you $230 million guaranteed. Like we can't do that. That contract was insane and we can't go off of that. So I see both sides, but I do think Lamar, to me, from like reports I've heard, and of course I'm not like tapped into like Lamar Jackson or anything, but he doesn't seem like the kind of guy who would like pull like what Deshaun Watson pulled a couple of years ago and say, okay, I'm not playing. Like I think even if they don't work out a deal, I think he'll be out there and he will play. My feeling is they will work out a deal.
Same.
And I'm not a Dolphins fan, but I'm kind of on the Tua bandwagon in the sense that I think like I always felt like Washington should have drafted Tua over Chase Young. That was always my pick.
First overall, nice.
And so I'm on the Tua bandwagon. I think he's gonna have a huge year this year, and I think people are gonna like look at Tua as like a franchise QB, kind of like Jalen Hurts last year, where people were like, this guy's not the future. He's gonna, he's not even gonna start. They're gonna trade for Deshaun Watson, right? That was a lot of the rumors. And now people are looking at Jalen Hurts like, oh yeah, he's a quarterback of the future then. Oh yeah. Like let's put all these pieces around him and let's go win some games. I think that's what we're gonna see from Tua this year.
I 100% hope that you're right there. Let's stay with quarterbacks, but let's jump into the fantasy realm. You are a co-host of Fantasy Endgame, which is a fantasy football show on YouTube. Make sure to check it out, guys. But so we have to start talking some fantasy stuff with you on the show. Malik Willis. Let's specifically talk Malik Willis with regards to redraft leagues, because of course you take a flyer on him in Dynasty, but is he worth taking in a redraft league? We have Ryan Tannehill as the photo here behind the timer. We had a story in today's Legit Football that it's possible he could be a trade or cut candidate in 2023 because they would actually save $18 million against the cap. The Titans would, by getting rid of him, off him next season. And they start the season, the Titans, 3 of their first 4 games are the Bills, Colts, and Raiders. 3 teams which, one's a Super Bowl favorite and the other 2 should very much be in the playoff conversation. If he gets off to a rough start, could we see Malik Willis start? And on the fantasy angle, is he worth drafting and redraft?
It'd be definitely not worth drafting outside of maybe, really deep 2 QB super flex leagues if you want it like as a bench stash for later in the season. I could see a scenario where if the Titans really struggle this year and we're deep into the season and it's obvious they're not in the playoff race and they're not going to make the playoffs, that they say, okay, fine, let's get him out there and see what he can do. But I also don't feel like, it's funny that you mentioned this because for some reason in my head, I was like, before I came on the show, I was thinking about like what we might talk about. And for some reason, I thought about Malik Willis, even though it's like, why would we talk about Malik Willis?
I put it out there. I put it out there in the universe.
But Vrabel to me doesn't seem like the kind of guy who would, like he benched him in the preseason game and they asked him why. And he said, because you didn't throw.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't seem like Vrabel is the kind of guy who's going to be like, let's just give this guy a shot and see what he has. Like, Vrabel seems like an old school, stubborn, veteran kind of guy.
Patriot way, kind of, yeah.
Yeah, who's going to be, even if they're struggling, may not throw him out there. So, definitely not drafting him in 1 QB leagues, no way. Deep, super flex, 2 QB, you can stash him on the bench, but more than likely, if anything, he's going to be maybe a waiver wire pickup later in the season because we've seen it with other guys. I already mentioned Jalen Hurts, Trey Lance, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray. These quarterbacks that can run like they can, they don't even have to be great through the air when it comes to fantasy, right? Because you lose so many points to their legs. So if he does get a chance, I think he'll be a very, hot waiver wire pickup, but I don't see him being a guy that you have to draft necessarily.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I'm finishing up a best ball draft, and there's 20 picks. And Willis just went, I think, in the 18th round. And I guess you want to take a flyer. Maybe he comes on at the end of the season. That could help in best ball. Single quarterback redraft. Definitely agree with you there. All right, next question coming from you.
Okay, so this is one I really want to talk about, like the rookie running backs. And I guess this works for both fantasy and real life. Like, there's a lot of, Dameon Pierce right now having a lot of steam. Brian Robinson getting some steam. Looks like he might be taking over at least some of, if not the majority of the work there in Washington. Obviously, Breece Hall, great prospect. Kenneth Walker dealing with the injury. How are you feeling? Like, how are you feeling about the rookie running backs right now? Are we going to see, because it feels like most years, like we have a rookie running back, whether it's the whole season or in the second half, that just comes on and really helps not only in fantasy championships, but in real life for their team. How do you feel about those guys? Is there anybody that you're looking at who you think like, this guy has legit, chance to be great before the season's over?
Well, Breece Hall's the obvious, but I want to focus a little bit more on Pierce. I think Pierce he's actually set a new precedent with signing contracts to 4th round. I think they gave him more guaranteed money than any 4th round pick previously. And that, to me, before he even got to camp, told me that the Texans really liked the guy that they were drafting in the 4th round in Pierce, and had a plan to use him more than just a filler. We saw that come to fruition, and he has looked fantastic. All the reports in camp. We had a story today in Legit Football about how good he looked in the preseason last night. And they've all reports are that he's going to be RB1 in week 1. The fact that you got a rookie like that that's going to be hitting the ground as the RB1 from the beginning and has already shown those flashes, and they don't have a ton of other skill players outside of Cooks and maybe, Nico Collins. I think there could be a lot of opportunity for a guy like Pierce to shine. I do like Breece Allen. He's actually, it seems as though Michael Carter is at least going to start the season as technically the RB1, but Hall's too talented to just not get those opportunities, both in the run game and the pass game, in a Shanahan offense, which, Mike LaFleur running the offense there with the Jets, running backs can really thrive in those offenses, especially if they're able to hit those zone reads and get chunk yardages. If that athletic ability shines through, I think we'll see Hall's usage and opportunity go up and up. I like Michael Carter. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a great prospect, but physically talent, he doesn't quite match the Breece Hall. So I really like him. My guy I've been touting a lot is Tyler Algier. I really liked him coming out of BYU. I really like the opportunity he's going to have to produce as a running back in that Atlanta offense, because I think the Falcons are going to use Patterson more as a pass catcher than they did last season, where it was just like he's the RB1, mainly because they don't have a lot of weapons outside of Pitts, and they drafted Drake London. So you get a guy like Tyler Algier, who is kind of Derrick Henry-esque, maybe not with the speed, but you've got Arthur Smith running that offense who had a Derrick Henry in Tennessee. You get a guy like Algier, who is just a bruiser, a great guy at the contact point, a great broken tackle guy who can really set up play action for your Marcus Mariota, your Desmond Ridder, and the weapons that they have. So I just have a feeling that towards the end of the season, a guy like Tyler Algier, especially if you talk about goal line work, that's just a guy I could see really surprising. So I'm targeting him in a lot of my drafts. Quick, 10 seconds left before halftime. Do you have a rookie running back that you're going after?
Well, obviously Pierce now, and I agree with you on Breece Hall. I think he's going to take over that job sooner rather than later.
Yeah, agreed. All right, that chime means that we are at halftime. Great first half. Quick mention, as always, guys, make sure if you do not subscribe, go to legitfootball.com. 100% free. All your daily NFL news direct to your email. Just go to legitfootball.com and enter your email address. But we do have a sponsor today. All-22 is the only fantasy football platform to use PFF grades as its main scoring component. Because of this, users can draft a full 53-man roster. Have you ever wanted to be an NFL GM in fantasy? You can do that with All-22. All-22 is the only fantasy platform to provide a true GM-like experience and put you in the seat of an NFL front office, your front office. Right now, you can go to all-22.com, enter code LEGIT10 for 80% off. It's a limited time, only $9.99 gets you the subscription for the season. We are going to be doing an all-22 fantasy league. I will have some more details for that later. There may be some spots for some fans, for some followers, readers, listeners, so keep tuned for that. But go ahead, all-22.com, enter promo code LEGIT10, get an amazing discount. Chris, why don't you let everybody know where they can find you?
Yeah, so we're here on YouTube, Fantasy Endgame. You can just search Fantasy Endgame. And like Brian said, we do fantasy football content all year long. We have an awesome season plan this year. We have 9 weekly videos that we do, start, sit, waiver wire, trades, plus some other cool stuff that nobody else really does. And we're going to be going live 3 times a week this year to help you with waiver wire pickups, trades, and of course, all your start, sit questions. So yeah, appreciate it if you check it out. And we're growing pretty fast, so we're pretty excited. So thanks for having me.
You don't need to make your own fantasy decisions. Go to Fantasy Endgame. Listen to Chris and his co-host. They'll tell you what you need to know to win your league. So make sure to check Fantasy Endgame on YouTube. I've already been checking it out. I was happy to meet you at the Fantasy Expo, Chris. Yeah. You guys do fantastic content.
Thank you.
All right, halftime's over. We've done the halftime speeches. Are you ready for the second half, Chris?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Great. So let's stay in the fantasy realm going here into the second half. I want to talk about Hunter Renfrow. So this is a guy who was wide receiver 11 in PPR last year, currently going as wide receiver 33 in the 7th or 8th round in redraft PPR leagues. So I want to ask you about that. How do you feel about Hunter Renfrow versus his average draft position right now?
So Renfrow's a guy I don't have any of this year, and I may regret it. Maybe I'll regret it. He's just not the type of guy I like to draft because I prefer guys, especially in that range, when you're getting, those aren't late round picks, but you're getting more to guys who they're not your week in, week out. I'm going to rely on this guy to help bring me to a fantasy championship, right? They're more guys who maybe their target share isn't as known or their role in the offense isn't as known or they're not as talented as the guys up at the top of the draft. So I'm looking for guys who can, be way more than we think they could be. And I just don't see that with Hunter Renfrow. Like, I think Hunter Renfrow will be good. And in PPR, he'll be good. He'll be one of those high floor guys. But I just don't see him having, like one of those seasons that come out of nowhere, like Debo last year. I don't know if Debo was quite going in the 7th round, but he was kind of like in that 5th, 6th round in draft.
Ayuk was going ahead of him in drafts last year.
Yeah, and, he shocked everybody and basically won people their fantasy championships. I'd rather look for guys like that who I think have that potential upside. And if I miss, I miss. Okay, fine. It's my 7th round pick. But if you're right about Renfrow and he's giving you 13, 14 PPR points every week, which there's nothing wrong with that, that's not really putting your team over the top. It's keeping your team afloat, right? It's keeping your team afloat, but it's not putting it over the top. So for me, he's just not a guy I ever really draft. I don't really draft that, style of player in fantasy. But again, maybe I'll be wrong because he did have some nice games last year when he was scoring touchdowns. Plus, you got to, with Adams there.
Yeah.
I mean,
Waller coming back healthy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be harder for him to have a big enough target share and B, a big enough red zone share to score touchdowns like I think he needs. So he's just one of those guys, me just personally not really drafted. How about you?
So it sounds like you like those ceiling guys, right? And I agree with you. I am higher on Hunter Renfrow than you are, but I will be the first to admit he's not a ceiling guy. If I'm drafting him, it's because I want floor. Maybe I've put together my fantasy draft and I have a lot of high ceiling guys, but there's a little more variance. Hunter Renfrow is a guy that you can rely on, especially in PPR leagues, to get just a set amount of targets. He's a fantastic route runner, and he's got amazing hands. So you can kind of almost count on a set amount of receptions, but I don't think he'll get as much in the red zone this year because you've got Devontae Adams, one of the best red zone wide receivers in the NFL, and you've got Darren Waller, who is, he's a little banged up now, but we're expecting him to be back healthy for the season. So you're going to have those targets that he had last year more evenly distributed. I don't think he's going to finish wide receiver 11 or even wide receiver 20. But the fact that he's going as wide receiver 33, I don't think there's 32 wide receivers and this is like my, wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 with regards to my league or my team. I'm probably putting him ahead of that. So I like him better than his ADP, but we're not talking about 2 or 3 rounds better. But maybe I'm chasing him like in the early 7th or 6th round.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. All right, well, speaking of upside, how about Trey Lance?
Yeah.
Because I think Trey Lance is an interesting guy to me, right? Because on the one hand, we know what he can do on the ground with his legs, with his athleticism in a Shanahan offense. But on the other side, we have a lot of question marks about what he can do through the air. Got the cannon arm, but can he, like, week in, week out, make the throws he needs to make the reads he needs to make, and do that kind of stuff? So I know Jimmy G's still there, and they're saying they're going to trade him, but haven't really heard anything, right, that it's close. You feel like Trey Lance is good enough to be the guy this year and do what they need him to do, or do you feel like the Niners might regret not giving Jimmy G another chance?
So it's interesting. I am a weekly guest on a big 49ers podcast called 49ers Rush. So if any of you guys are listening, shout out to John Chapman, 49ers Rush. So we've obviously talked a lot about this. I even live in the Bay Area. I may be a Dolphins fan, love the entire NFL, but I live maybe less than 20 minutes from Levi's Stadium. So I'm just surrounded by 49ers country. And to me, the biggest question mark of why I'm not putting necessarily the Niners in the Super Bowl is that quarterback position. They're a stacked roster, top to bottom, especially on the defense. But if Deebo Samuel can stay healthy, if Ayuk can continue the momentum that we've seen in camp and how he finished the end of last season, if George Kittle can stay healthy, I mean, it's just, and of course you've got Kyle Shanahan, one of the best offensive play callers in the game. I think he's got the talent to do it. He's so much more of a mystery because even in college, I think he only had 15 or 16 starts. This is not a guy who Desmond Ridder was, starting for Cincinnati for multi. Right. He just has so much college starting experience. But as tantalizing as his skill set is, Trey Lance has I think he was had like 80 something snaps last year when he filled in. So it's just such a mystery. We've had a lot of camp reports of him being very inaccurate, of him being inconsistent, of having like 50% completion rates. But then I watched the first preseason game against the Packers, and granted it's the preseason, but he had a perfect passer rating. He looked lights out. That offense was humming with him in at quarterback. So it's like, I see that he can be that. I definitely think he has the ability to be that. My biggest question is, how consistent can he be? Luckily for him, you don't have to be an elite quarterback to take that 49ers roster to the Super Bowl. Jimmy Garoppolo took him to the Super Bowl, right? So you just need, and honestly, Shanahan and Lynch have been reported as saying that they don't need him to carry this team. This is not a team that's going to rely on the strength of an elite quarterback dragging that team. The rest of the roster is good. So he just needs to play smart football. He needs to protect the ball. He needs to work within the structure of the plays that Shanahan calls, while adding that element that they never had with Jimmy G, which is the running ability and the deep threat ability. So that's really what it comes down to. Now, does that mean he won't go off script and we'll see some of those accuracy issues? Absolutely. But I think from what we've seen so far, I'm willing to bet that he will be what they need versus willing to bet that he. So I would say I'm like 65% in favor of Lance, 35% that he'll be a bust. What about you?
Yeah, I actually have a friend who's no shock, huge football fan. He's a Buccaneers fan, and we were talking the other day, and he said the Niners are one of the because I was saying like the NFC to me is so weak this year, and he said the Niners is a team that scares him. And I mean, yeah, if you like you said, if you take out the QB and you look at that rest of that roster, especially on the defensive side, that's a scary roster. That's a scary, scary roster. But man, like I was saying to him, okay, you're in the NFC Championship game, let's say, and it's Tom Brady versus Trey Lance. Are you really worried that when he needs to, that like the pressure is on and he's got to make a play, that Trey Lance is going to step up and make the play? This year, probably not, right? Probably not. Like, more than likely, it's going to be a game where he like throws 2 interceptions, fumbles the ball, and people are saying, oh, that game was there for us, but, you know, because that's kind of what rookie QBs do when they're – I mean, look at Kyler Murray last year. Technically, he's not a rookie. It was his first playoff game. He looked terrible.
He looked
like he never – like he looked like he didn't even belong out there. Yeah. Like, we're talking, you know, so yeah, I'm with you. I think he could be, like he will be eventually, has a potential. And he certainly has more potential and upside than Jimmy G to carry this roster to a Super Bowl one day. But I don't know if this year is going to be it.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think we're going to have our prediction show soon. But as I've done predictions on previous shows where I've been a guest, I've put the Niners kind of in that NFC Championship game and losing to the Rams or maybe the Bucks. But yeah, I think you're 100% there. I think the future is bright. I don't think this is quite the year that he gets it done. So let's talk a little bit about my Dolphins, kind of. Let's talk about Mike Gesicki. So a lot of reports coming out recently that he's, because of his lack of blocking, he's never really been an inline tight end. He's essentially been like a glorified giant wide receiver who has the tight end designation for Miami, and it's worked in the past, but this is a brand new offense. This is that Shanahan offense where you need a guy like a Kittle who can do 2 things well. He can do yards after the catch. Kittle's probably the best tight end in the league at that, and then a monster blocker. And Gesicki does neither of those things well. He's a fantastic athlete, great pass catcher, but he's never been very good at yards after the catch, and certainly not so much blocking. So my question is, let's assume they trade him. What are some teams that should trade for Gesicki? What are some teams that actually could be targets? I'll give you a few options. You don't have to stay within those. Dan Orlovsky of ESPN named the Colts, Jaguars, Bengals, and Panthers as options. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the Jaguars still have Dan Arnold, right? I think they kind of like Dan Arnold, don't they?
And Evan Ingram.
So yeah, that's right. That's right. How can I forget about Evan Ingram? What a stud. They don't make, but the Colts and the Panthers definitely make sense. I mean, they definitely make sense, especially the Colts. I mean, Mo Alley Cox, but come on, Mo Alley Cox. And the Panthers, I don't even know who their tight end is, to be honest. Like, do they even really have a tight end? Tremble?
They do. Tremble, yeah. I was thinking, I knew it was a young guy. Yeah, Tremble. I think he's a second-year player. Those certainly make sense. But to go to Gesicki a little bit, I don't even – why did they franchise tag Gesicki? Like, why that's the big question. Like why
are you
do
franchise
that?
Tagging a guy who you're just going to make an inline blocking tight end? Like, you could find that guy. Like, you can sign that guy, right? You don't have to franchise. You don't have to waste a franchise like that.
I will say this was done because, I mean, franchise tag, I thought the same question recently. Franchise tag deadline is like back in March. Right.
True.
So this is Mike McDaniel hadn't been head coach that long, but he hadn't really implemented what he wanted to do. And I think they just saw the physical talent and only realized through OTAs, through training camp, through the preseason that he doesn't really fit what they're trying to do. So maybe it was a lack of foresight on GM Chris Greer's side, but yeah, I'm like, why franchise tag a guy like that? And the only reason I can think of is they just didn't know he wasn't going to fit.
Yeah, maybe that's true. And also that was before they made that monster trade for Tyreek Hill. I'm sure at the
correct.
time they weren't sitting there thinking, well, we're going to have Tyreek Hill, so we don't really need Gesicki.
Absolutely true.
Yeah,
you're on something there.
Yeah, pretty surprising to me what's happened with Gesicki. Because like you said, primarily has been used almost like a wide receiver, and now they're like, no, just go in line and block. Which
they don't, like you mentioned with Tyreek, they don't need a wide receiver anymore. They've got wide receiver. They brought in Cedric Wilson too. I'm curious to watch it. I do like the Colts. Mo Alley Cox is a solid, just basic tight end, but like he can't do from a receiving standpoint, like a red zone threat. He can't do from a receiving standpoint, from a stretch the field standpoint that Gesicki can do. And I like Jelani Woods at all, but all reports is that he's not coming along all that quickly. Their rookie tight end, and they lost their other rookie tight end for the year. So yeah, I like that as a destination.
All right. Well, I think we got to finish with some Tua talk here. So I wanted to ask
let's do it.
So I'll just make it simple. Breakout year for Tua, or he busts and becomes like a journeyman, one of those QBs that gets passed around from team to team. How do you feel about Tua going into this year? Which one are we going to see?
I have been so on the fence, and I've been trying to be non-committal, but this is a hot take show. We got to give the take. I'm going to say that he breaks out, and I'm hoping that I'm not doing it as a homer. I do cover the entire league. You guys know that Legit Football covers all 32 teams, so I try to be as objective as I can. But I loved his skill set out of Alabama. I wanted them to draft him over Herbert, and most people did. There's not a lot of people saying, "Oh, Herbert was the guy." No, we didn't really know he was going to have this, level of NFL career. But I just like him for this offense in particular. He's actually got comps to Jimmy Garoppolo. He's a point distributor. He's a very accurate quarterback. He's good at putting the ball in a receiver's position to get yards after catch. And the Shanahan offense is predicated on yards after the catch. So I actually think his skill set works really well. He actually throws a nice deep ball. He has all this almost false narrative that he can't throw deep. That's not the case. The previous offense, number one, they didn't have the deep weapons. Devontae Parker is more of a 50-50 jump ball. They had Waddle last year, but they were using him as like this short kind of, get the ball and go, catch the ball 8 times a game, which is great. He set the rookie record for receptions. They weren't using him as a deep threat, so they were not calling plays for him to be a deep ball passer. If you look at his metrics, he was actually one of the more efficient deep ball passers. He just didn't do it very often last year. So I like that he has that deep ball ability. I like that he's got the accuracy. He's a point guard. He's a distributor. Yeah. And he finally has the players to distribute to. So if Hill can stay healthy, if Waddle can stay healthy, Cedric Wilson, I love him as a third guy in the slot coming from Dallas. You've got all these fast running backs, so you can really work the play action, which is another big staple of the Shanahan offense that McDaniel brought over. I think he's poised for a big year, and you improved on the offensive line with Armstead and Connor Williams. If all of those pieces work, and there's a lot of new pieces, new coach, new coaching staff, new scheme, new everything. If those pieces work, I like Tua's talent to come through. I'm going to predict a breakout season. How about you?
Yeah, I'm there with you. Like I said, I'm with you. I thought Washington should have drafted him over Chase Young. I know Chase Young was the safer pick because Tua was coming off that serious injury, but to me, a QB can alter your franchise for the next 10 years. An edge rusher like Chase, even as good as Chase Young, cannot. But I think he's going to break out too this year. That's another thing. People didn't factor in this hip. This isn't the kind of injury that you come back from the very next year. Like, it takes time. This is the injury that ended Bo Jackson's career, right? So this isn't the kind of thing you just bounce back from. I think we're going to finally see a healthy Tua with all the weapons, with an offense. That's the other thing. Brian Flores didn't sound like he had Tua's back. More of a defensive-minded grinder kind of coach. He's got a great coach for his skill set, great weapons for his skill set. I think next year we're going to be talking about Tua as a top 10 real-life QB.
Quickly, do the Dolphins make the playoffs this year?
No, because the AFC is too stacked.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I have just on the outside looking in.
Yes.
That gong means it's the end of the game. Post-game press conference, Chris, how do you feel your team performed today?
I think, we've got a very young team, inexperienced team. I think we handled it pretty well. If we ever get a chance to come back and do this, I think we'll really knock it out of the park for sure.
Awesome. Would love to have you back. Get better every game kind of thing.
Right.
I love it. You guys, Chris, you're awesome. Make sure to check out Fantasy Endgame, guys. Just look up Fantasy Endgame on YouTube. We're going to be having this show, Chris, I don't know if you know this, 5 days a week during the season. So we will have, I'm going to need guests. I would love to have you back on. We'll talk some fantasy stuff. We'll talk some NFL. Good luck to you.
My co-host would probably like to jump on as well sometime. And he's a Dolphins fan, so you guys get along great.
Done. Dolphins fan is all I need to hear. I love it. Chris, thanks so much for coming on. Guys, make sure to check out Legit Football, check out Fantasy Endgame, and check out All 22. Remember, enter code LEGIT10, and keep your eyes peeled and your ears peeled for our Legit Football All 22 League we'll be announcing soon. Guys, thanks for listening and watching. This has been 30 Minutes of Football with Legit Football.
I would see Kansas City as a team being on the outside looking in.
That's spicy. Having a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo on there could be a benefit, but have they kind of burned that bridge?